reward you for investing in American workers.
How can you assure the Americans, the outspoken conservatives like ourselves, that we're not going to go bankrupt if it's a Democrat administration? You know, God help us.
Donald J. Trump, they tried to throw in prison for 787 years. Never happened before in the history of this country, not even to the loser of the Civil War. They tried to destroy it. These people tried to break the law. They did break the law in some cases to destroy people. They've got to suffer consequences for it.
And I watched your movie.
Yeah, that's right.
Spectacular.
My hair here, yeah. Thank you. That was
20 minutes for you once we started all.
That was a crazy process.
Okay, I'd like to probably end with something about the conference.
Absolutely.
So if we have time for that, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I'd love to do that, but
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
traveling, so
That's just,
yeah.
thanks for this. This is really neat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your
man.
story, it's just so amazing.
Yeah, thank you. How's the website doing now?
You guys can start filming, can you?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, whenever.
Yeah, the website, so I started with a couple readers. Today we're at 3.2 million page visits a day.
It's amazing.
So, and you know what's amazing about that? Thank God, we're probably the most censored outlet out there.
That's right.
And our traffic keeps growing. And I'm
amazing.
watching
Yeah,
it, you know.
Well, was Facebook? They tried pretty hard to censor you guys a few years ago. Has that backed off at all, or is it? Do you still feel like it's?
Facebook is still censoring us.
Okay.
But they've stopped with these fake fact checkers. You
Yeah.
know? we had fact checkers from China fact checking our COVID stories, right?
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So we didn't. That's not much of a fair shot, is
Yeah,
it?
that's right. That's like the fox's guarding the hen house.
Truly. And Twitter, unfortunately, Elon's in charge, and but there's still a lot of censorship for a lot of people, including us. So
Yeah. I mean, my sense is there's a weird thing where if you share links to anything, I feel like the X algorithm kind of downvotes it somehow. So it's like it's almost like he wants you to do all the content on X directly, and if you don't, you get kind of penalized.
But you know
for
what
it.
we find then is because we're already censored, a lot of our stories may not go viral.
Yeah.
But what we'll see is this happens all the time. So then someone will take our story, put it on their site, not put a link, because like you said, you're not rewarded if you put a link.
Sure.
And so then their stuff goes super viral, gets millions of hits, but it's our work.
But it's your work, yeah.
So I don't like that about what's going on.
That's tough.
And I did write Elon about that, and I can't tell you what he wrote back. Did he quit following me?
Oh, did he?
Right. I thought it was being. I wasn't. You know, I'm not typically. Really. Like stupid about.
Of course. Well,
confront. Especially someone like Elon. I was very respectful, but it'd be nice if you could look at this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's obviously got a complicated relationship right now with the Trump White House. Though, my argument to Elon is. Like, you're not going to be on the left, right? Even if you wanted to be, and he doesn't, they're not going to have you back. That ship has sailed. And so I really think it's a mistake for him to try to break from the president. So my hope is that by the time of the midterms, he's kind of come back into the fold. But yeah, I don't know that he would take my call right now about anything.
Really?
I'm sure he would. I kid. I'm sure he would take my call. But obviously, the drama around him and the White House over the last couple of months. Again, my hope is that just kind of cools down a little bit because he did help us a lot in the election. The president even says
it was great.
All his frustration. Elon was a very, very critical part of the team last election, and so my hope is by the midterms, things are kind of back to normal.
Right.
Yeah.
That would
We'll
be
see.
nice.
We'll see.
I
was
going to ask that question, and now I don't have
well,
to.
That's right. Knock on wood. I'm always, my attitude is I try to be sort of pretty Big Ten about this stuff. Like if you're patriotic, you're not trying to stick your knife in the back of the president, you're not trying to betray the movement. I don't care about these like minor little disagreements and issues. We have to kind of win with the whole movement together. And that's kind of the attitude that I try to take. And as much as we've accomplished in the past, I guess now 7 months, and We can brag about our accomplishments
Right.
all you'd like, and I'm sure the audience in Vegas would love to hear that. You still get, obviously, some people, the president calls them panicans, who are saying it's not enough. It's
So
not
he's
enough.
using that term too. I
Yes,
see that a
yes,
lot.
yes. I think he came up with the term, right?
Probably.
And the president is, I think he's exactly right that, okay, let's just take the immigration issue. I know the president would like to see, I would certainly like to see more deportations, but the courts have been fighting us every step of the way. We didn't have the resources necessary until a few weeks ago to actually hire all the ICE agents that we needed to get out the 20 million strong Biden border invasion. And even with that, this year in 2025, we're going to have the first negative net migration number in 50 years in this country. For the first time in my lifetime, we're having actual remigration of illegal aliens outside the United States. That is something to celebrate. Of course, we always want to do more, and it's important to keep the pressure on. But anybody who's trying to say that we're like not taking this seriously, I think that they themselves are being fundamentally dishonest. And there's a little bit too much of that, I think. And the president is right to point that out, that there's a little bit, I think, too much of people, sort of the left is still out there. And the left is still trying to throw people in prison. And if they get the House back, they're going to start sham impeachment trial after sham impeachment trial. We absolutely got to hold our people and our government to a high standard. I also think it's okay to win every now and then, and to be happy about winning every now and then. And on the immigration issue, and I think a lot of the other parts of the president's agenda, we are actually making really good progress. We should be celebrating that. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that when you're in the conference live in Vegas in a couple days.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask you about some of these accomplishments because it's been incredible.
Sure.
And one was that the middle class tax cuts, because it's not, well, none of this is getting the press that it should. They just can't tell the truth.
That's right. That's right.
They're not going to tell the American people what's really happening. But instead, what they're saying is that you're giving tax cuts to, of course, your friends, the billionaires, who are, by the way, all voting for Democrats and donating to Democrats.
Exactly.
But that'd be great if you could talk a little bit about the middle class tax cuts so people understand that this is happening.
Yeah, so this is a very, very big part of the president's agenda. So first of all, no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime, major tax relief. I think the biggest tax cuts, making the Trump tax cuts permanent, major tax cuts, the biggest tax cuts I would say in 30, 40 years in this country at least, and maybe ever. But there's also something really important there that, to your point, the media never focuses on, and it actually, we're doing full expensing. What that means is that if you're investing in building an American plant and building an American manufacturing facility and hiring American workers, you're going to be able to fully claim the cost of that as a deduction from your taxes. If you think about the American tax code, for 50 years in this country, we've rewarded people for putting factories offshores, for hiring foreigners instead of investing in American workers and investing in American manufacturing. The biggest thing I think the Trump tax cuts do is they completely flip that on its head. We're going to reward you for investing in American workers. We're actually going to penalize you for investing overseas and trying to create jobs for foreign workers. And that's, of course, what the tariffs do. And these things go together, right? The tariffs are kind of the stick. The Trump tax cuts are the carrot. We want to reward you for building in America. We want to punish you for building overseas. And again, Jim, that is such a crazy change from where we were in this country for 50 years. My entire life, I've seen factories close down. I've seen good middle-class manufacturing jobs go to Mexico, go to China, go to somewhere else because our politicians rewarded people for building overseas. The president is trying to reward you for building right here at home, and that's what the Trump tax cuts do fundamentally. If you're a worker or a business, you're going to get rewarded for making things and building things right here at home.
Which, of course, helps all the middle class.
Of course it does.
Yeah.
Of course it does. And you already see, even, there's so much to do, and some of this stuff takes time to really see the benefits of it. But we saw blue collar wages rise the fastest that they have in 60 years in this country. You see people finally they're getting ahead of inflation as opposed to falling further behind inflation. Again, I'm 40 years old. I guess I'm 41 because I just had a birthday, which sucks. Getting older is terrible, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
And, the thing that I realize is that for 41 years, the story of the American economy was the middle class falls further and further behind. Good jobs get shipped overseas. You see other countries building great things, even as your communities and your towns become less prosperous, we're changing that. We're actually giving middle-class workers a pay increase for the first time in a very long time. I'm very, very excited about that. But I think as good as the first 6 months were, as good as those first 7 months were, we're going to see a hell of a lot more progress over the next 3.5 years.
But that's exciting.
Yeah.
Because it's been incredible so far.
That's right.
Yeah. I was going to
and
ask.
Jim, I have to tell you, so when the president, I remember we're talking about the One Big Beautiful Bill, right? Which is all the money for the border, it's the middle class tax cuts, it's all the stuff that we're sort of doing to try to make the country more prosperous and safer. And the president a few months ago was like, we really need to get this done by July 4th. And if you go back to the first Trump administration, which I think was very successful, we did not get the big tax cut bill, I believe, done until September of 2017. So when the president said, you got to get all this stuff done by July of 2025, I was like, Mr. President, aye, sir, I'll try, but I am skeptical that Congress is going to be able to move fast enough and actually have this on your desk for signature by July 4th. But as with many things, he actually knew the right tempo. He knew the right pace to strike. We got it done by July 3rd, and the president signed it on July 4th. It's amazing.
That really is amazing.
Yeah.
That's something else.
I did not think it was going to happen, but it did.
Right. I was going to ask you too. You went to Munich this year. You made
did.
several trips around the world.
Yep.
And you gave a speech there at the Munich Security Conference.
That's right.
I don't know if the people in the crowd were so pleased to hear that, but it was a spectacular speech. I hope people listened to it. Every word of it was just perfect. We put up the whole speech on our site.
I
We wrote
appreciate
about
that.
3 articles on it. It
That's
was so
awesome.
good.
Yeah.
And afterwards, the chairman of the Munich Security Conference gave a response a day or two later. And unfortunately, he didn't agree with you, and he thanked
okay.
he thanked the people who wrote him and said, that this is wrong. Just keep going with what you're doing with this censorship.
Yep.
And then he started to cry. I don't know if you
I
saw
saw that. I did see that.
So anyway, that was a remarkable speech. And
Does it really make you think that there's a whole lot of toughness when you're crying because of somebody's words, right? These guys, they act like they want to fight a war with Russia, and
Right.
yet too many of them are unwilling to even confront tough words from an ally, right? The United
Right.
States remains an ally of Europe. I mean, I think I've talked with you about this, Shem. I love Europe. It's the cradle of civilization, obviously. Most Americans can trace their ancestry at some level back to England or Germany or Italy or so forth. So there's a deep connection culturally to Europe. But let's be honest, Europe in some ways has followed the pathway of the United States under the Biden administration to censorship, to trying to silence people instead of persuade people. And that's what I wanted to call out at the Munich Security Conference. You ask yourself, what is the biggest threat to America's security? You hear the president say this all the time. It's actually not China or Russia or any other foreign adversary. We can deal with other countries. What is a real threat is, call it the deep state within our own countries, call it the worst, the most subversive elements within our own countries. What is the biggest threat to the United States of America is when Joe Biden tried to throw Donald Trump in jail or tried to throw his supporters in jail for having the wrong political opinions. That scares me way more than anything a foreign competitor or a foreign country is doing. And that's what we ultimately have to fight back and win against, is this idea that you should be silenced, you should be thrown in prison, you should be shot for daring to disagree with the far left's institutional agenda. And of course, we've got a president who just doesn't care. He's going to say what he thinks he needs to say. And more importantly, he's going to do what he thinks he needs to do.
Yeah, he's made great strides in that area.
He has.
How can you assure the Americans, the outspoken conservatives like ourselves, that we're not going to go bankrupt? When Trump is gone, when your administration moves to the next administration, and if it's a Democrat administration, God help us. But how can you? What do you have to say to these people who, there's a lot of people getting their courage back, but it was really disrupted.
That's right.
What they did. It was really tactics used you'd seen throughout history in different regimes.
Well, I think the only thing the far left really responds to is power, Jim, if I'm being honest. I wish that wasn't the case, but it actually is. And so, the thing that they're actually going to be responsive to is the recognition that there are consequences on the other side. And this is why it's so important and why the president is so insistent that we actually take legal action against those who broke the law in the Biden administration. If they get off scot-free, if they're never investigated, if they're never prosecuted when they violated the law, then they're just going to come back and do the exact same thing again. And there are a few different ways, of course. So it's the big tech companies that were censoring conservatives. They've got to know that's not going to be allowed, and there are going to be consequences for it. The banks, the president is really preoccupied with this, and rightfully so. So many conservatives, so many conservative nonprofits were debanked. They actually had their money stolen from them by these big Wall Street institutions. You've got to make sure that doesn't happen. And of course, you've got to pay the lawfare back in kind. You've got to say to the Comeys and the Brennans of the world, of course, you got to follow the law. You can only prosecute people when they actually broke the law. But we know that a lot of people broke the law in the last administration, and they've got to face real justice, not just words, not just getting hauled before a committee in Capitol Hill. If people broke the law, they have to actually be prosecuted for it. Because I think that if they do that, if they know that the consequence for breaking the law is go to jail, then the next generation of Democrats, they're not going to try the same thing. They're not going to try to throw Donald Trump in prison. You remember, so go back to the Civil War. Jefferson Davis, who was the leader of the Confederacy, I believe that they tried to throw him in prison, maybe successfully, for 2 years. Donald J. Trump, they tried to throw in prison for 787 years. Never happened before in the history of this country, not even to the loser of the Civil War. They tried to destroy it. They tried to bankrupt him. They tried to destroy his family. I mean, Don Jr., his son, is one of my closest friends. Don Jr. spent more money on lawyers than most Americans will ever spend in a lifetime, simply for having had his dad get elected, I would say twice and now 3 times, to the presidency of the United States. So we've got to make sure that if you violated the law, if you broke the law in this crazy Russia investigation, you got to get prosecuted for it. Consequences. I think that's the only real language that the far left understands in this country.
I agree totally. And we did see some progress today, I think, or yesterday, where they have sent out some subpoenas to Hillary Clinton, some others. Yeah, so.
Yeah, we're sending out some subpoenas, and there are actually some active investigations, I think, that probably you won't be fully aware of until we announce the conclusion of those investigations. But the president has been very clear. The attorney general, the FBI director have been very clear. They are looking at law breaking. And for people who broke the law, it's not going to be a slap on the wrist. We're sorry. Have a nice life. It's going to be, you've got to face consequences for it. And I really think it's our sacred obligation to the American people to ensure that those who broke the law pay the price for it.
It looks like President Trump might be having a different, he's developed some in the fact that his first win, he comes out and he's asked about Hillary, crooked Hillary, you know, when everybody was chanting, lock her up, you know, at every rally. And he said, no, we're not going to do that. That's, you know, we're going to forget about all this, forgive her and move on. I don't think he's in that same mode today.
No, if you think about back then, he was trying to be the big person, right? The Democrats are the ones who try to throw people in prison. We're just going to try to unite the country, focus on the governing agenda. But I think what he realized is that for those people who did break the law, if they don't face consequences, they're just going to come back and keep on trying to do it again. And I think that recognition that the Democrats really are going to try to destroy a lot of people unless they suffer some real consequences. You know, it's not just the president. It really is the entire administration has a slightly different attitude because we all saw what happened. I mean, there are friends of mine who, you know, voted for the president, supported the president, but were really had their eyes open during that 4 years. And I honestly think it was a blessing because I think it revealed a lot about what the Democrats are, what they were willing to do, the lengths they were willing to go to destroy their political opposition. When you saw that willingness to use the courts and the legal system of the United States to destroy people, to debank them, to bankrupt them, I think all of us realize, oh, well, these people tried to break the law. They did break the law in some cases to destroy people. They've got to suffer consequences for it.
Right.
And that wasn't so obvious, I think, to a lot. Honestly, it wasn't obvious to me in 2017, 2018. It was certainly obvious by 2022.
Yeah, something has to be done,
Yep.
for sure. Also, your former competitor from the last election, Governor Walz, heard some news about him the last 24 hours where the FBI and DHS was covering for him and his ties to communist China?
Yeah. Well, this is
Do you think
why
they would have done this for you?
No, they certainly would not have. So this is why Gateway Pundit is so important, because you guys report on this stuff and uncover some of this stuff. And I read about it on your website. But as I understand it, the basic idea is that while the Biden DOJ was trying to throw Donald Trump in prison on fake charges, they were also aware that Tim Walz had all these connections to the Communist Chinese Party and did nothing about it. And I think all of us who followed that election closely, obviously I followed it very closely, recognize, okay, so you have a guy who's governor of Minnesota, is a high school teacher, has no reason to go to China. Like, okay, maybe once you go on vacation, but you go over 20 times over a period of years. Like, there's something weird going on there. And it seems like the Biden Department of Homeland Security actually flagged this guy as a potential security threat for his connections to the PRC. And he's not just some random guy living in Minnesota. He's the governor, and he was the potential vice president of the United States. I think in so many ways, literally and figuratively, we dodged a bullet in that election. Just amazing. The president dodged a literal bullet, but I think the whole country dodged the bullet of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And to all those who are watching in Vegas, aren't you glad you have me as vice president and not a communist agent, Tim Walz?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that guy was nuts. Bouncing around the stage and jumping around. It was too much.
Jazz hands Tim Walz.
Oh my gosh. So one last question.
Sure.
We are having a conference this weekend, and we're going to be playing this at the conference for everybody who's there. We have some really courageous patriots who we're going to be honoring, and I'm really proud about that. We have Rudy Giuliani, who went through hell and back and has been so misrepresented in the news.
Of course.
We have General Flynn, who was one of the original ones who, the media just followed him around, him and his wife, and abused him so bad. When
the original victim in some ways of the Russia collusion hoax.
Yeah.
A patriot, a lifelong public servant, but they really tried to destroy him over the idea that he was in bed with Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, and then Roger Stone, we have several J6ers, and at Gateway Pundit, we've always told their stories. If they wrote us in, this is my story, could you help us? Because you know what happened? They lost their jobs. Their families were broke. They had to pay rent. And so we told a lot of their stories. I've always been proud of that. But we have some of them coming who are going to be speaking. And Dr. Simone Gold, who went inside the Capitol and gave a speech on hydroxychloroquine, of all things. And then they bust through her door and put her in prison for a couple months.
Crazy.
Yeah. So we have a lot of these people who are going to be there. And any final thoughts, any words to these wonderful people who have been so courageous, and really so many more. There's a lot of people we'll never hear about who were abused too.
Of course. Well, I guess the first thing I'd say, Jim, is congratulations to all of them, because I think our victory was also their victory. The fact that we're going to punish the people who are engaging in this lawfare, the fact that we're actually getting to the bottom of the Russia collusion hoax, the fact that we, of course, a lot of people who were unjustly prosecuted in the wake of J6 have finally seen some justice under the leadership of President Donald Trump. I just feel very good for them, because I know a lot of them suffered. Frankly, a lot of them suffered a lot worse than I ever did for their politics, for their beliefs, for their principles, and I just admire their courage. And so I hope that the atmosphere in Las Vegas is one of celebration, because you guys certainly earned it. And to Rudy Giuliani and General Flynn, to Roger Stone, who's a very, very, one of the smartest political minds. Roger Stone was persecuted. People forget he's actually a brilliant, brilliant political analyst. To all of them, and to the people whose names I don't even know, thank you. Thanks for what you did. Thanks for making it possible for me to have this job. And all I can promise is I'm going to do the best job I can for the next 3.5 years and try to make you proud.
All right. Thank you so much.
Of course. Good to see you, Jim. Thanks, man.